Hello, welcome to another computer literacy broadcast. Today we're going to play with basic graphics editing. So CS120, again, this week, we had some shared images to take a look at here. Graphics terminology, hopefully you read it. Using the Pixlr Editor tutorial goes over some basic edits with links to other basic edits. Using digital colors. So that's important too, getting used to the idea of a hexadecimal color representation, fair use, and hopefully you completed the tutorial. Other optional things, I have a tutorial I built here about using Google Photos, which has a lot of great features. I use it all the time for basic edits, and I use that to share photos. So it's like a drive for your photos. And then some basic graphics editing with the Pixlr Express editor. Pixlr Express is very similar to Google Photos, with the added bonus that Google Photos gives you a ton of space to store your photos. So I back up all my photos there from various devices. I like it a lot. So we're going to take a look at the basic graphics project right now. Just wanted to go over a couple of shared images first. Aspect ratio is a super important idea. And so I have a couple of pictures related to that. Let's see, where'd they go? A little slow here. Here's one. So this one here shows some standard aspect ratios for television and movie type things. So the old standard television was a 4:3 aspect ratio, which could also be reduced to around 1.33 to 1 for the fraction. Digital TVs then came out, and the standard ratio there was 16:9, or about 1.78 to 1. And then the standard cinema type screen was about 2.35 to 1. And so whenever a movie is released to be on televisions instead, what they do is a couple of different things. They do what's called a letterbox, which basically puts a black bar across the top and the bottom, allowing you to see the full width of the original motion picture. Or they have to basically crop out part of the image and decide what part to show you on the screen, and other parts get lost. And so interestingly, a lot of old movies are reshown, but they were rebuilt to be shown on small TVs, which means you lose a lot in that process. So another example, famous movie you may or may not have seen, an old one called Lawrence of Arabia. Great image here of them out in the desert here. And I'm going to open this right now with Pixlr Editor, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. The connection between Google Drive and Pixlr can be kind of sketchy sometimes, so it might not work for everybody. So you might have to just save images on your hard drive. So here, for example, if I wanted to crop this, and I'm going to go to Image, and let's use crop, and then I'm going to add a restriction where I'm going to set the aspect ratio, and I want the aspect ratio to be the standard old TV, which was 4:3. And so then if I go to draw a box, the box is always going to be in the ratio of 4:3. So there's my box. So it's almost impossible for me to get both Lawrence and his friend there in the same frame, right? So that's a problem. Let's see, I want to change now. The other digital TV aspect ratio is 16:9. So let's see what that looks like. So if I draw a rectangle here, this one I can get a little bit bigger. So I can actually get them both in, but I still am going to miss some stuff on the edge when I crop it. And so when these movies are reformatted from the panoramic view to the digital TV view, stuff gets lost. So there's different kinds of ways that they do that. One is somebody just watches it, and they're constantly moving this view screen around as the movie's playing, trying to get the best view for whoever's going to watch it later. So it's kind of an interesting idea about aspect ratio. And one thing they wouldn't want to do is just shrink it down to that aspect ratio. So let me not save this and go to image and image size. So like if I turned off constrain proportions and I just made the width narrower to fit the 16:9 ratio. So let's say, without doing the math, it's around 1,000. I hit OK. What's going to happen is then the people get distorted, right? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to distort the way people and things look. So that would be a bad idea. So generally, they're going to crop it to make it fit on a different kind of viewing screen. That's a big deal. So something to think about. All right, let's get out of there. And I think I'm done with that for now. When you're done with this project, you're going to have an image of a computer that you've manipulated in various ways, and you're going to have the image of the Blue Mountains that you manipulated in various ways. And in the end, you're going to have 15 different files. You'll have the original files plus your edits of them. So there's 13 edits in all, 2 original files. So your folder is going to look something like this in the end. You may have to collect all your photos on your computer first, and then upload into Google Drive later, depending on how the interaction between Pixlr goes. So I'm going to demonstrate that interaction right now. So I'm going to log in as my student instead of my teacher person. So here's me as a student. My screen looks a lot like yours, and I want to start this project. So I need to, in my Google Drive, under CS120 projects, I need to put a basic graphics folder. So projects. And let's add a new folder called Basic Graphics. And this is where all my stuff is going to be stored eventually. And depending on how my connection to Pixlr goes, I may have to resort to putting things on the computer at first and then uploading to Google later. So let's see how it goes. So let's see. I need this digital photo to start with. And so here's the digital photo. First thing I want to do is try to add it to my drive. So I have the original in there. And I want to make sure I organize it into the right folder. So I want to change inside my CS120 folder, inside projects. I want to put this inside the basic graphics folder. Next thing I'm going to try to do is see if I can connect to Pixlr. So right now, my drive has no apps that will edit images. So I'm going to look for more apps. And they offer a ton of photo editors here, and there's some really cool ones. I've only tried a couple of these. So I'm going to search here for Pixlr, and I could use Pixlr Express or Pixlr Editor. In this class, we're using Pixlr Editor, so I'm going to try and connect to the Pixlr Editor. All right, it says I can connect. So next thing I'm going to try and do is actually open it with the Pixlr Editor. And it's going to say, all right, can you please verify that you're going to use this account? And then I have to allow access to view and manage files. If I want to use the Pixlr Editor with Google Drive, I have to say yes there. And it's trying to connect. And you can do it. And sometimes this works well, and sometimes it doesn't, was my experience with this last year. But all these groups, Pixlr and Google, are constantly upgrading the software and trying to make it better. All right, we're not quite sure if Flash is installed. It is installed, trust me. How do I get to move on? Let's see, let's leave that and allow Flash to run and reload the page. All right, so you may have some blocking going on in your browser. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. Okay, so it looks like this went well. The problems I've seen in the past is when people try to connect from Google to Pixlr, this menu, file, edit, image, and so on, vanishes somehow. So if you do try to make the connection I just made, and this menu is missing, you can try restarting your browser and doing it again. If that doesn't work, if you still don't get this menu, you're not going to be able to do stuff with just the toolbar. You need more than that. So that means Pixlr and Google on your browser failed to work. If that's the case, then you'll have to do the following. When you open up this file, you'll have to download it. Now here, when I download stuff, it automatically puts it in my downloads folder. So I want to go to my downloads folder, and I want to move it somewhere better. So I already made another folder on my computer for CS120 projects, basic graphics. So I basically want to take that Panorama Blues and move it to my special folder, because there's a ton of crap in my downloads folder, so it's going to be harder to find. So put it somewhere special. Once it's on my computer, if you couldn't make that connection between Pixlr and Google, then what you do is open up Pixlr separately. So this is what I showed in the tutorial video earlier this week. And then I would open the Pixlr Editor. Once I'm in the Pixlr Editor, I can open the image from my computer that I just downloaded. CS120 projects, basic graphics, open. And then from here, I would make all my edits. So for example, the first edit was to, let's see, crop. Oops, already on crop. And I wanted to constrain it to an output size of 600 by 100. Oops. Work? Yeah. All right, so now when I draw a rectangle, it's always going to be of the dimension 600 by 100, and I can get whatever version of that I want. So it'll do two things when you do output size. It'll set the aspect ratio to 600 by 100, or 6:1, essentially. And you can select anything that has that shape. And then after you hit enter to crop it, it'll then resize it, because right now the image I selected is 4,000 by something, whatever the appropriate height is to go with 4,000 to be of the ratio 6:1. And then it'll resize it to actually be 600 by 100. So then I wanted to save that to my computer, and I'm going to call it Blues Crop 600, oops, extra letter, X 100, 600 by 100. And JPEG's fine for this, and it's at 80%. I'm going to up it to around 90%. OK, put it in the same spot as the original image. And it's now there. And then to make the next edit, I'm going to go back to the original image and go from there. And so make sure you read the instructions carefully. Sometimes we want to go back to the original image, but sometimes we want to go back to a previous image. So notice the next 5 edits here are going to be based on the 25% reduction of the original image, because the original image was ginormous. All right, so 2 different ways to proceed. If you can connect properly to Pixlr Editor, great. Then your Pixlr Editor, when you go to save something, will say, hey, do you want to save it to your Google Drive? It's going to save it to the folder in the Google Drive where the original image came from. You have no control over where it goes in the Google Drive. So sometimes things end up in the wrong spot when you use this method here. So what I always do is make sure the original image is in the folder I need it to be. The edits will end up in that same folder, and I can always move them later. If that connection doesn't work, then you're going to have to download the original files here in the graphical image to your computer. And then from your computer, you'll have to upload the image into Pixlr by opening Pixlr first, using File, Open, or from that home screen, Open Image from Computer. And then each edit will have to be saved to your computer and later uploaded to Google. And uploading to Google in batch is not that bad, so let me just do one more to demo that. So let's make the 25% reduction. So image size, so 25% of 4,000 would be 1,000, and it automatically updates the height because I'm constraining proportions, which is good. OK, so here's my 25% image. I can view it bigger if I want. Here I'm viewing it at 84%, but notice now it's 1,000 pixels wide by 281 pixels tall. So I want to save this. And here I'm going to put it on my computer as Blues. I like to put an underscore usually, and then I want to call this Blues 25%. Let's say to call it here. Smaller. So you can call it smaller if you want. That's fine too. going to call it blues 25%. Okay, I can put smaller in there too, just for fun. Oops, I missed. Hello. Oh, I did break it. Okay. There we go. All right, we'll leave the name there then. Oh, I can change it here. Color. All right, so let's suppose I have all 15 files done. Broken for the moment. What I would do is I would go to my folder where this stuff is supposed to live, and I would go File, Upload, navigate to the right folder, and you can highlight a whole bunch of folders at once. So to do that, I started on the first one, Shift, down arrow, or I could start with the last one, Shift, up arrow, or you can drag your mouse over them to select them, and you can upload a whole bunch at once. All right, let's let that one go away and get back to this one. All right, so let's redo that image size at 25%. So if you're not sure, you just go into a calculator, find out what 25% of 4,000 is. Calculator should tell you 1,000. And save it. And give it a better name. Call it whatever you want, as long as it's similar to what I said to call it. And notice I got saved to my Google Drive there, and hopefully it ended up in the right folder. Hey, there it is. And this is the icon view. I tend to like the list view better. It tells me who owns the original file. It tells me who last modified it. It tells me how big it is. I kind of like that. And I can also get more information on each file or the folder, which is kind of nice. All right, back here. So I've got that. So then the instructions say the next 5 edits are based on this 25% one. So I want to take that smaller file and I want to add a 50 pixel border. Now a 50 pixel border is going to look totally different on a 1,000 pixel wide image than it will be on a 4,000 pixel wide image. So make sure you use your smaller one, the 1,000 pixel one. So I am in the 1,000 pixel one. So to put a border in there, I go to Image, and I want to change the canvas size. I have to add 50 pixels on each side, which is 100 pixels for the width and 100 pixels for the height. So the width is now going to be 1,100, add 100 to the height, and that gives me 300. And then have it be all the way around. I have to anchor it in the middle, and that will distribute the extra pixels all around the outside. If you put it in the bottom corner, that would put 100 pixels to the left and 100 pixels on top. I want to anchor in the middle, which splits that 150 on each side, top, bottom, left, right. Okay. Default color is white. What do we got here? 50 pixel border. It doesn't say the color. I'm going to leave it as white. If you wanted to change the color, I demonstrated that in the last video, but I'll do that again here for fun. Let's zoom in on this sucker. Can we handle 100%? Just barely. A little bigger. All right, so there's my image with its 50 pixels, white all around. So right now I only have one layer. Notice that there's white in the sky that's probably going to match in some spots the white in my border, because these now I don't have I have one single image that has white on it too. So if I try to use the bucket fill and pick a new color here, again, this isn't part of this project. I'm just having a little fun. Maybe I want an orangish border, and I want it to be a little lighter. How about that one right there? Okay. So I'll hit OK on that. And then if I click here to fill with the white, notice it bled in from my border because the white in the clouds and sky was close enough to the white of the background. To fix that, we have to adjust the tolerance or do something different initially. So a different order of operations in terms of putting the border in there. So I'm going to undo that and see if I can lower the tolerance, maybe take it down to 15. See what happens. Still bleeds in. Undo. Maybe take it down to 7. Still bleeds in at 7. So it could be, I can't do this. Let's take it down to 3. Didn't bleed in quite as much. 1, undo. Oh, that's not bad. It just barely bled in at the top. So and if I take it down to 0, it's not going to do anything. So I can't go any lower than 1. So that's not too bad if I wanted a different color border. The way to do that and not have to worry about bleeding is to use different layers. And that's going to come up in the next project. So I might as well get ahead with you here. So let's see. I want to undo that. I want to undo the border. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the background by double-clicking that lock. Come on. There we go. So it's unlocked now. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer. Let's see, I think there's a button down here for that. Yeah, there's a new layer button here in the layer box where I can go to layers and add a new layer. Now the order matters. So right now my layer is on top here. So just check this out. If I hit the bucket fill right now, it's going to cover that whole layer. However, I didn't touch the painting. So if I uncheck this orange layer too, you can still see that underneath this layer is not getting messed with. Okay, so that's kind of nice. I can change the order of these layers and put that orange layer at the bottom. If I turn it on again, you won't see it because this top layer is completely filled with the color of the image. But I do have this other layer underneath. Next thing I'm going to do is after I put a new layer underneath, so you can always change the name of these, double click. This is the blues image. This is now my background layer. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to image and change the canvas size by adding that 100 in there. So this is like the proper way to add a border. You usually want to do it and have 2 different layers. Center the image part I already have. Now notice it put that checkerboard. The checkerboard is a see-through, and if you read about the image format properties, PNG and GIF have the option of a transparent background. That's what the checkerboard means, see-through. So what I can do is I can switch to that background layer. I'm going to turn off the front one, and I just wanted the bucket to fill all the way through there. So now if I turn back this blues image, I have a nice clean background with no problem with bleeding because the color is in a different layer. So it's like making a collage when you use layers. This kind of neat. All right, so that was a little more than you needed, but that's okay. I'll help you next week. So let's save this. And let's see, we're supposed to save this one as border. So blues border and JPEG 80 fine, and save a copy. The save a copy is important here because if you try to leave the same name, it'll make a copy of the file as opposed to overwriting the original, which is always a good thing. Google Drive is where it's going. Okay. If you couldn't connect to Google Drive, then you're going to save it to your computer. Maybe I'll do a backup there just for fun. If you can't connect to your Google Drive from Pixlr, the default will be your computer as opposed to the Pixlr cloud if you log into Pixlr. And border, good. And just make sure it goes into the right location. All right. So I think you guys can handle the other things. So, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. The other things that you're going to do here are to change the brightness and contrast. We did that in the tutorial. You got that down. Make the image black and white. Hint, reduce the saturation. Remember, I played with that in the last video. And then play around with the adjustments and filters and do a couple of different versions. So you're going to have I'll do one of those now, and you can do a couple of them. So let's see. I'm supposed to go back to the 25% image, so the one without the border, and make the next edit. And one of those edits is going to be to play with the brightness and contrast, save it. Then you're going to play with the saturation, turn the saturation all the way off, we'll make it black and white. And then you're going to play around with other adjustments and filters. So sepia is kind of like an old-fashioned picture. That's kind of cool. Solarize is kind of cute. Whoa, is that what Mars looks like maybe? And desaturate is the same thing as going to saturation, turning it off. That makes it black and white. Polarize, that's kind of cool, and you can play with the level there. That doesn't do much. That does a lot, but not too much actually. All right, so like polarized lenses on glasses. And then there's tons of crazy filters, like the Glamour Glow. Or the Kaleidoscope. Woo! And you can play around with these settings to make different kinds of kaleidoscopes. Like going into a black hole maybe. All right, so you'll play with one or two adjustments or filters, save it as your way number one, bring back to this version right here, do a couple other filters or adjustments or a single one, and then save it as your way number two. All right, let's move on to the next part. Next part is to take this graphical image here, which has way less colors, and we're going to play with this in a couple of different ways. So either you're going to, you should add it to your drive directly. That's always a good idea right away, and organize it into the right spot. So now I have an original copy of the image in there. And then you're either going to download it to your computer to then upload it into Pixlr, or you're going to try to open directly into Pixlr. And sometimes this works good, like I mentioned, and sometimes it doesn't. Looks like it's going to work for me today. Good luck. All right, so first thing I want to do is I'm going to change the image type. So to do that, all I do is a save on it, and I change from JPEG to PNG. And I don't really need to change the name of it because it's automatically on my computer going to make it computer.png. So let's hit OK. It's going to put it in the same place as the original. So if I look back at my folder here, I should see that I have computer PNG and I have computer JPEG. If I look at that in the other view here, computer JPEG, computer PNG. They're two totally different files. If I look back here, I can see that the JPEG is 63 kilobytes and the PNG is 348 kilobytes, so slightly different sizes when that transfer of file types happens. All right, where am I over here? Yeah, let's get rid of that, and get rid of that. So some edits you're going to do here. So I just did I have the original and I did the PNG version. Flipping horizontally is pretty straightforward. Just flip horizontally. Rotating 90 degrees is pretty straightforward. You can rotate it 90 degrees clockwise for the next one. To rotate 40 degrees, 45 degrees, that's under Edit, Free Transform. And this is the center of rotation. You can move that center somewhere else if you want. And to rotate, you go near a corner, and your icon will change shape from a crosshairs to a little circular thing. And you can click and drag and make your rotation. Now let's double check. Counterclockwise, I went the wrong way. So let's try that again. Counterclockwise would be this way. So maybe right there. And then hit enter, and that will fix that rotation right there, and then do a save on it. Either put it on your computer or your Google Drive. Computer rotate 45. Okay. Now, the next thing about filling the screen with the color, I want to go back to the original. That's that bucket fill I demonstrated earlier. Find yourself a cool color. And then once you find that color, you want to make a note of the hexadecimal version of it. Or So here, my color is FF F200, if that's what I choose for the color. I think I want, what do I want today? Purple. There we go, I like that one. So mine is B700FF. So write that down somewhere, whatever color you pick, because you're going to include that when in your notes when you submit this. Okay, now as far as the fill goes, when you use your bucket, it might bleed. If it does, you got to adjust the tolerance. So I'm going to undo that and try again. So 21 is too tolerant. I'm going to try 10. And every image is a little bit different. 10's too much, maybe 7. Too much, maybe 5. Not enough. So I could try 6. I could go around and start trying to touch it up. Let's try 6. Maybe 6 is a little bit better. 7 didn't work. That one's a little bit better. So as far as touching it up goes, I can just kind of go around and click. Other thing I can do is I can zoom in, and I can grab the paintbrush with that color and use the paintbrush to touch up. And as far as the paintbrush, we can control some things like the kind of brush I have. So this is a fuzzy brush like a paint can. Maybe I'm going to choose, that one should work better, 20 pixel, and then click off that to choose your brush. So every single tool you use has options. And can I get that? Yeah. So it turns out there's, in this case, no perfect tool. So I'll show you another way to do this in a minute. And so then you would just have to scroll around the image, cleaning it up. Like that. All right, so let's just make believe I finished that. File, save. Color screen. And bang, it's saved. So I'm going to go back. Let's see. I lost it in my undo history, so that means I'm just going to close this version. I want to save. I already saved it. No, thank you. And I want to open an image. Let's see. It looks like won't let me access my Google Drive here. Nope. So I have to go find that original image of the computer. Leave and reopen it. All right, so another way to do it is to use the magic wand tool. I'm going to use that on the next one too. Magic wand tool still has a tolerance also. Click and it tries to select light pixels. If I hit delete here, you'll see that I selected way too much. So I'm going to undo that and lower the tolerance. So before it looked like a tolerance of 6 might work. And so 6 for the magic wand tool is still too much. So let's take it down to 5. And sometimes when you select something, you then need to deselect it to continue. And that's in the edit menu. That one's a little bit better. And then if I hold down the shift key and click, that'll let me add to my selection. So again, what I did is I held down shift. Notice a plus appears by this. And then I think is it's Alt. No, Control allows me to remove stuff from the selection. So I could zoom in on the bottom corner and try and select more of it, like some spots that I missed here. So I would go shift click. Oh, sometimes it's hard to collect everything. So notice this is almost as tedious, maybe even more tedious than the bucket fill and the paintbrush. So it kind of depends on the image and the tools you're using. Sometimes there's no perfect way to do it. But once you finish making your selection, then you can use the bucket fill on the selection. Let's see, zoom back a little bit. So now if I go grab the bucket and a color, I lost my color, so let's grab green maybe this time. Oops. Come on. Green. There we go. And then make a note of the color you chose. And so now if I fill, it's only going to stay in the selected area. So for example, even if I change the tolerance, and if you remember, if you make it 255, normally that'll select everything. Here it's trapped inside that dotted scrolling selection that I made. So selections can be kind of nice, and then I can go and clean it up after. So notice my selection did miss a couple of things. So then I would go in here and edit, deselect all, switch to the paintbrush, and then zoom in and try and touch it up a little bit if I wanted to make it better. And this brush is a little bit too big for touch-ups. I probably should use a different size brush. Let's Let's go with maybe the 9. That's not too bad. So I could use that 9 pixel brush to clean up the edges. And then once you decide you're done cleaning it up, save it. So save, computer, color screen. And I already have a color screen, so saving it as a copy should actually give me 2 different versions of it in my Google Drive or on my hard drive. All right, transparent background. So I'm going to go back to the original image, which I lost again. So let's actually download it this time. And then upload it. All right, it's downloaded to my downloads folder. So I'm going to open from my computer, downloads, and there that sucker is. All right, so here's that original image. So to go for a transparent background, I want to use the magic wand tool. Now at first, when I grab, again, notice it missed some stuff. So my tolerance is too low. Default tolerance was 21. If I click here, let's see what happened. Come on. Didn't do anything. I broke it. Image, select all. That worked. Magic wand. Huh. See when that happens. Deselect all. Let's try switching tools. There we go. So at 21, it did a pretty darn good job. You can see I missed a couple things on the edge there, but I think it's probably close enough. If I hit delete right now, it's really not going to do too much. The default color in a JPEG is white in this system right here. So I don't really have transparency yet. So I'm going to undo that because that didn't do crap. And what I need to do is unlock the background layer first. Once the background layer is unlocked, then it's free to make a transparent background. So I click again with the tool, and then if I hit delete on the keyboard, now it removes that color and gives me the transparency. So I'll see through this image when I put it somewhere, only if I save it as the right type. So when I go to File and I go to Save, it's going to put it in a JPEG. If I leave it that way, I'm going to have a problem. So I'm going to call this computer transparent, and I'm going to write trouble next to it. You'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to leave it as a JPEG for now. Why is that bad? Well, if you did your reading, you'll remember, ooh, an error has occurred. Try again later. All right, let's try saving it to my computer. There we go. And put it in the right folder. Okay, so I'm going to save it again, and this time I'm going to save it as a PNG, because PNG can handle transparency, JPEG can't. So I'm going to take off the word trouble at the end, because I know it's going to be transparent this time, because it's a PNG. So we have to click OK. An error occurred. All right, so I lost my connection to my drive. Remember I told you that can be kind of flaky sometimes? So I got to put it on my computer and then upload it later. Computer transparent. No, I don't want a JPEG. I want a PNG. Always pay attention to where it goes, what it's called, and what the file type is. There we go, PNG. It says there's nothing in my basic graphics drive. It's that there's no PNG images in my graphics drive at the moment. Save. Now there is. Let's close it. I already saved it. Close it. I already saved it. And I'm going to open an image from my computer. First one I'm going to do is open the one that I believe is transparent, the PNG. Ah, there's the checkerboard. It's definitely transparent. And then I'm going to open up the one that I saved that I thought was going to be transparent, but I did it as a JPEG. And that's the one I call trouble. Open. Check it out. It's white, not transparent. So when you want transparency to remain in your image, so you can see through part of the image to whatever's underneath it, like if you put it in a Word document or on a web page, you got to make sure you save it as a PNG. Other systems allow you to save as a GIF or GIF, GIF. So that's also another option. All right, that's it for now. Have fun, do good computing, and I'll see you in the future.